The Chicago Bears have already done several top 30 visits. And when you look at the players that they've brought in for top 30 visits, there seems to be a clear trend. We're going to talk about how Ben Johnson's fingerprints are all over and signal what the Chicago Bears are probably going to do in this year's draft. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Darrell Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today. And question, have the Chicago Bears kind of signaled what their plans are here in their draft strategy with what they've done with their top 30 visits? When you look at it, the Chicago Bears have met with 4 running backs in their top 30 visits, and only 2 of those players being defensive linemen when it comes down to it, right? And so it seems like, let me be clear, not everything comes down to top 30 visits, right? The Bears have gone to several pro days. They've gotten to look at several players at all positions, but it does seem like now it's their 4th official running back visit after bringing in Caleb Johnson to that team. This is after Marion Hampton and other players that they've met with as well, Ashton JEanty, right? And so it seems like the Chicago Bears are very heavily considering a running back here, maybe even with their first round pick, right? And that's something that you really have to look at. And that is a signal of Ben Johnson, right? When you look at what Ben Johnson's history has been with running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs and players like that, and having guys like that, it makes sense that you're seeing that the Chicago Bears are clearly targeting a running back. Like that's just is what it is there, right? Caleb Johnson is just the latest that the Chicago Bears have met with. Caleb Johnson, a big running back, one of my least favorite prospects as far as what the running back prospects that the Bears have reportedly met with and things like that. But when you look at what Ben Johnson did in Detroit with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, right? His offense is catered to running backs, is catered to slot receivers, right? It's catered to those type of things. And so how Ben Johnson heavily relies on the run game, that's a big reason why you're seeing the Bears go heavily after running backs and really interviewing so many running backs to really get a feel on exactly what and who should they target with it. Of course, Ashton JEanty and the conversation around him is there a lot. We'll get in comments from Albert Breer in regards to, maybe renewing some confidence that JEanty could be there on the board for the Bears. But the Bears, they have to make sure that they get this decision right? And the reason why I say this is that when you have a running back class like you do in the 2025 draft, it's going to come down to maximizing the assets, right? And, like I've said this many times before, if it comes down to a situation where you get JEanty, let's say JEanty is the pick by the Bears, right? You get Ashton JEanty in here, but Marion Hampton has an amazing career as well. The thought process between that is, well, you could have traded back and gotten Marion Hampton and still got an amazing running back and possibly got more assets, right? That's why I've kind of taken the mindset of I'm going to wait and see what the Bears do and judge everything as a whole. Judge this whole offseason as kind of one whole. Of course, we're going to give our grades for the Bears in the draft and things like that, but really when stepping back and looking at it, I'm going to want to review the whole entire offseason because I think all the moves kind of go in tandem, right? And that's what the Bears are really trying to evaluate here is that talent and do it. They have tons of tape. Of course, we know with the Chicago Bears, personality matters a lot, especially for a team that's trying to change this culture. And Ryan Poles has always really valued high-character guys when it comes down to that as well, right? So I think when you look at that, it all paints a picture that the Bears are going to try to find the right running back that not only fits Ben Johnson's system, which there are several that you can make that case for, but also get the right guy that brings the personality that you need in this locker room. The Caleb, that pairing matters in that as well. And me, Bobby, and C-Dub, we did a live stream yesterday in which we talked about the players on the Bears roster that we think are the most at danger of losing their spot, right? That doesn't mean necessarily getting cut from the team next season or anything like that, but losing their spot. And we all kind of agreed that, DeAndre Swift is one of those guys, and that's just as the starting running back. He could very well still be somebody that's factored into the plans of the Chicago Bears, that still gets tons of touches with the Chicago Bears. But as far as losing that starting spot, and that's mainly due to how heavily focused on running backs the Chicago Bears have been in this draft. So Ben Johnson's fingerprints are all over this, right? And why people love to talk about Jared Goff and the emergence that he had under Ben Johnson, Ross St. Brown as well, in the emergence that he had. It really starts with the run game. That's really where it started for with the Bears. Now, we know that Ben Johnson is going to develop the system here and cater it to the skill set of the players that we have here. But it still does not mean that there aren't still kind of archetypes of players that Ben Johnson likes in his system that just work in the scheme and that he likes there as well. So, yeah, focusing on elevating Caleb Williams, getting Caleb Williams into the spot that he wants to, that's all there as well, right? But you need to have the dynamics, right? So when you look at the pre-draft visits so far by the Bears, Amarion Hampton, Ashton JEanty, Brashard Smith, now Caleb Johnson, right? And when you look at those guys, right, no matter which route they go, if it even ends up being one of those guys, again, they went to the Ohio State Pro Day. Travion Henderson, Quashon Judkins could very well be in the mix as well. We'll see what happens there. But when you look at these guys, right, there's something that they all kind of have in common, right? When you look at the body makeup, they're very different for some of these guys, right? Look at Ashton JEanty. He doesn't have the size of an Amarion Hampton. He doesn't even have the running style of an Amarion Hampton, right? Brashard Smith as well. Like he's another guy that brings a different type of style there, right? But what you're seeing is that all these guys are dynamic and they can be used in both the run game and the passing game. They both have kind of upside in those areas, and that's something that you're absolutely looking for. And that's really what the archetype that Ben Johnson is looking for in his system and in his scheme. He wants productive running backs that can do a variety of things. They can come out the backfield. They can catch passes, right? They can do those type of things, even being solid blockers as well. JEanty's maybe the one that doesn't really stand out as much there, but still having those skill sets also there, right? And it all points to this, is that if we're talking about running backs that have a chance to lose their spot, I think that Roschon is going to find himself much further down the depth chart than what he's been the last couple of years. And I think that plays into just where the Bears are right now, right? In the type of player that Ben Johnson wants on this team. So Roschon's going to have to also show that he can stay healthy. I do think that with the way that Ben Johnson gets creative in using players, that they could still find a spot for him for sure if he's going to be productive and healthy. But it's just clear that Ben Johnson's fingerprints are all over what the Bears are doing with this draft and the way they're bringing in their top 30 visits. We're just going to have to see how it all shakes out for the Bears, who ends up being the guy there, right? But we did get some word yesterday from Albert Breer. Now, it's all speculation, right? It's not like Breer's taking this as, hey, I know exactly what this team's doing because I talked to him, right? But he did point out the fact that that the Raiders, who are a team that's been commonly mocked for Ashton JEanty to go to, could very well decide to go offensive line. That they could decide to go protection. They could decide to go something else, and that could make the Ashton JEanty slide down to the Chicago Bears, right? Don't expect him to go number 7 to the New York Giants. Don't expect that. Don't expect him to go number 8 to the Carolina Panthers, right? So then when you look at it, that would really leave number 9 with the New Orleans Saints, right? And they have been rumored as a potential landing spot for Ashton JEanty as well, right? And so that when you look at the Saints there, if right, the two teams that are kind of the biggest threat for JEanty not to fall to the Chicago Bears comes down to the Raiders at 6 and the New Orleans Saints at number 9, right? And so when you think about what they could do as well, could they take the top quarterback on their board, whether it be Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart, right? Could they end up going quarterback there? Do they go defensive end to replace Cameron Jordan, which is another option that they can do there, right? It really depends on that. Like when you talk about the Bears and looking at the value of running backs, that also goes to every team in this draft as well, right? They could also look at how are you valuing evaluating those running backs depending on the other spots that they can be at and what other draft picks that you do have. So, Albert Breer's speculation there is kind of on point that, those teams very well could take Ashton JEanty, but there's a possibility that they can look at, hey, we could take Travion Henderson. We could take Quashon Judkins, right? We could take one of those players that are going to go later on and be perfectly fine, but we can shore up a spot that we need more, right? And the way that things are going, right, especially if Shedeur ends up going higher than expected, still have my doubts there when it comes down to that, right? But if he does go higher than expected, how does that impact your draft board? Which is something that we did talk about a little bit in yesterday's episode as well, with the possibility of Will Campbell falling down to the Chicago Bears. So overall, like, everybody's still trying to get a feel on what other teams are going to do in this draft, and that's really left it to really a lot to still be up in air for the Bears and the other teams for that matter in this draft. But you're starting to get other people noting and talking about the potential of the Bears and what they can do, right? And especially at the running back position, you're getting a lot of kind of talk about that because there is, right? Lance Briggs actually talked about, what the Chicago Bears should do and how they should invest in the running back position. For whatever that's worth, take that for what you will, right? In regards to that, Briggs is Briggs. He's going to say some shit that he says. Like, I love when Lance Briggs talks. Like, I love that Lance Briggs talks football now, that he's out there, out in the world. But he said this: with DeAndre Swift being a player in space, a space type of back, speedy spot, Cam Skataboo is a guy, or Skataboo is a guy who runs really well in between the tackles, catches out the backfield extremely well, and he'll move chains. To me, he's an every down type of back. Great balance, great vision. I don't think there's anything he can't do. There's a lot of people that love Cam, right? Now, Cam is somebody who is going to go much later in this draft, right? And he does bring a lot of what you look at for running backs, especially under a Ben Johnson scheme and what he's able to do everything, right? He breaks tackles. He has power. He has, some speed, not the breakaway speed, right? But he still, he has enough of that, right? And so Cam Skataboo is a guy that a lot of you guys have brought up in the mailbag and things like that, right? And you can make an argument for it when it comes down to it, right? And the Bears have second-round picks there, 39 and 41st. And these put them right in the spot of basically any running back other than Ashton JEanty and Omarion Hampton, right? But that goes down to, again, how you evaluate and value the running backs that you have here, right? I don't think that Cam is a 3-down running back to me. When it comes down to it, I think that he's a very talented player and a player that if the Bears were to go him, make no mistake about it, I'd fall in love with him because I do think he's going to be productive, right? But, that's kind of more so looking at a pairing with DeAndre Swift. And I still don't know if that's what the Bears are doing, right? The Bears are going to add a running back in this draft. I think that's clear. I think they signaled that with what they've done and all those things, that a running back is going to be taken by the Bears here in this draft. The question is who, where, and when, right? That's what the question is when the Bears are gonna bite on that. And so, I love a lot of the guys that the Bears have brought in. I love a lot of the running backs that are on the table here for the Chicago Bears. There are a lot of options here for the Bears, and that's really good. When you have a position that clearly you want to address and address in a meaningful way, right? Not just get somebody who could turn into something. No, the Bears want a running back that can contribute right away. And because they do that, I think it comes down to just, again, that evaluation when it all comes down to it. And we'll see what happens. But when you look at it, right, the Bears have pick 10, right, which, they could address running back like anything. You look at running backs, offensive linemen, defensive edges, right? They're all there available at number 10. What you do there is really going to kind of infer what you do in other places, right? Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Ashton JEanty, those are kind of my favorite players at that number 10 spot there for the Chicago Bears. And it really depends on who falls, where they fall, and then how the Bears evaluate that, or if they trade back or anything like that. Pick number 39, I think that's kind of the more obvious running back position if JEanty doesn't fall there. I think if they go another position at number 10, number 39 is probably where you're going to go your running backs at. That's where you can get a lot of guys in the Travion Hendersons, the Quashawn Judkins. That's where you can get those guys, maybe even Caleb Johnson. That's where you get one of those guys at. Pick 41, that's probably where you're going to go. If you don't go offensive line early, that's probably where you're going to go offensive line and tackles there. There are a lot of really good tackles that could fall between there for the Chicago Bears. There's some really good defensive tackles as well, right? With Billings coming off injury and things like that. There's TJ Sanders who could go there. Darius Alexander are other guys that could be really good fits there at that pick. And then pick 32, the round 3, pick 72. That's where I think you're going to go either defensive line or offensive tackle, again, depending on what you do with your second round pick, right? And there's some really good guys there that make a lot of sense for the Chicago Bears also in that mode. So that's kind of how you're looking at in the first 3 rounds. Now, round 5, you can get a guy like, if you don't do Tyler Warren at tight end, that's where you can get your guys like Mitchell Evans, who we had talked about yesterday, right? Who could be gotten around that spot in round 5. I think you can really get some really good value out of that spot as well. And then the 2 picks in round 7. Listen, here's what I'll say there. I hope that the Bears package their 2 7-round picks and find a way to move up, whether it's back into the 5th round or something else. Not to say you can't find quality in round 7, right? But it doesn't always, it's not a sure thing, right? You got to really go deep into your draft bag, which we've seen Ryan Poles do before. So it's not like it's something outside of what Ryan Poles has done or things before. But I think you just got to look at it and say, like, your 7th round picks, like how often do you really find finding really quality guys out there at that pick spot. But again, that's up to the Chicago Bears to answer. That's not for us to answer there. So we'll see what the Bears do overall there. The draft is right around the corner. I can't wait to the NFL draft personally. I'm just ready to get this shit over and done with. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'm just ready to get it done, right? That's where I stand. I'm ready to get this done. So we'll see what happens there. But before we go, I do want to talk as well about some of the comments from Darnell Wright in regards to the Bears and the changes that they made, right? Darnell Wright said this: the guys he's bringing in are the standard of what we need, right? And that's a good place to understand. Like, Darnell Wright, as a rookie, has seen some really bad offensive lines. And while he's been the bright spot in many of those offensive lines, it's no doubtly impacted his development. And I think in bringing out better guys, bringing in guys that he says are the standard, so to say, Drew Dahlman, Joe Tooney, right? Guys that have been very productive over their NFL careers. Jonah Jackson, another guy who's been a Pro Bowler and been very productive over his NFL career. There's no doubt that the Bears have upped what the expectation and the standard is of that offensive line. And bringing in a guy like Dan Roushar as well as the offensive line coach, that's what they're changing here, right? We talk about changing the culture a lot here, right? We've talked about that a lot. And you can't change the culture if you keep the pieces the same. Well, let me not say you can't. There are some people that have done that, but there's some teams but it's very rare, right? You have to change the personnel. You have to change the coaches, right? And the fact that Darnell Wright already, through the voluntary off-season program, has already realized the step that the Bears have taken in the right direction of correcting that offensive line. You do not want Caleb Williams to be sacked 68 times again, right? That goes without saying. You don't want to have another year of you leading or being in the top of the league in sacks allowed per game. You don't want to allow that to happen, right? And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that offensive linemen are very prideful as well, right? There's pride in guarding and stopping a player from getting past you. And that's where hopefully the Bears are going to succeed at and excel at this year, is having pride, execution, and expectation on that offensive line. And Dan Roushar is going to be a huge part of that. Ben Johnson, as the head coach, is going to be a huge part of setting that expectation, right? You do that by setting it in the locker room. And that's what the Bears really have to hope that they're bringing here now with this team, because you cannot have another season like you had last year. You just can't. And if you do, it's going to, again, it's another wasted season. You do not want to be held back again by what the Chicago Bears have done in the past. You cannot continue to be held back by that, because it's asinine. It's really what it is. It's silly what has happened so often by the Chicago Bears, man. So, we'll see what happens there, man. Overall, I'll say this. Darnell Wright, the Bears team, everybody deserves better from what the Chicago Bears have been, right? And you have to get yourself in a spot where you are that what the bullshit, just to be frank, where I was trying to say it in a more PC way, but fuck it. You can't, the bullshit that the Bears allowed last season cannot be allowed. The number of times that Simo and his offensive line were on the floor, we had numerous offensive linemen on the fucking floor. That is not what you can have again, right? You cannot have that. So you got to get it together. You got to get that shit together, and that has to happen for the Chicago Bears. You cannot have or let the expectation be what it's been the last few years for this team. You just cannot. And if you do again, what are we doing here, right? And it's good that Ryan Poles understood where he went wrong in building an offensive line. It's good that he understood that, recognized that, and has moved the fuck on from it, because Ryan Poles, he allowed a standard to be there for an offensive line that was just a shitty offensive line. Ben Johnson ain't allowing that coming in. And it's really good to see that they've understood the difference here. But this goes down to the entirety of the team. You cannot have a team that completely quits on you like we've seen this happen with the Chicago Bears in the past. And this coaching staff is not going to allow it. And therefore, the Bears have made the proper steps to come out of the doldrums of where they were before. You cannot allow that to continue to happen, right? And so, overall, whatever this Bears team continues to do, whether Braxton Jones is the starting left tackle or not, whatever happens there, the Bears have done a good job at setting an expectation and a standard for what their offensive line needs to bring this year. And you got to live up to it. Anybody who's not living up to that has to go. They just have to go. That's just what you have to what you have to set here. And so hopefully the Bears realize that, man. And I say all this to say as well, Caleb has to be better too, right? And we're talking about setting the expectation. We're talking about setting the standards. Caleb Williams as a starting quarterback has to get better. But again, if he's the quarterback that he says he wants to be, he's the quarterback that we drafted him to be, he already knows that, right? And this is going to be a season of growth for Caleb. Especially, I love the fact that Ben Johnson's already talked about having him under center more this year, because you need that for Caleb Williams. He needs to be under center. You got the best center free agent option out there in Drew Dahlman, right? So yeah, you need to be under center with that. You need to be building better trust so that you can thus bring better execution. Let's hope that's what the Chicago Bears are prepared and ready to do. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Chi Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, chicagobearscentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.